All right, hey guys, welcome to the Filipino American Ministry podcast. I'm your host, Henrik, and this is my co-host, Aaron. And today we're going to be talking about the needs of the second generation in an immigrant church or in a Filipino American church specifically. So why don't you share your thoughts, Aaron? What do you think? What are the needs of the second generation?
Starting with me already, dude. I'm 1.5. You're second generation, so maybe we should start with you. For you guys who don't know, Henrik grew up in the U.S., so he's second gen through and through.
Yeah.
I moved here when I was 15 or 16, so I'm more of a halfway there, 1.5.
Yeah, well, I think when I formed this question, or when I was thinking of this question, I was also thinking like for millennials, because we're millennials, like what are the needs of millennials, the millennial generation in an immigrant church? And then I could speak more to the Gen Z, like what did the Gen Z want to, what are their needs? Because I was doing youth ministry.
We should probably differentiate that, like I think even though we grew up at church in the same church as youth, millennials are probably different from Gen Z, and you're more in that culture than I am.
In Gen Z?
Yeah, I don't know if the differences are big.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of commonality. But the Gen Z it seems like they do have their own. I still feel like I need to consult the youth that I'm close with to understand.
I think that's probably more important. Meaning, the Gen Z, the needs for Gen Z, since I'm guessing a lot of our listeners are going to have to deal with Gen Zs. More than millennials.
Yeah. That would be a good topic to talk about next. Like what?
But in general, we can talk about both of them.
Yeah. I think there's commonalities no matter what age, no matter what age we're in or what generation. The second generation has specific needs, I think. Like I created a list of things that the second generation needs, and one of them is community. I think that's something to watch out for in the immigrant church, because the immigrant church is more geared towards, like community-wise, I think it's more geared towards the first generation. For those of you who don't know what we mean by first and second, first generation is the Filipinos who moved here to America, and then they're raising their kids, and their kids are second gen. And Aaron is 1.5 because he came here when he was in high school. So he grew up, half of his childhood was in the Philippines.
After high school, actually.
Oh, yeah, that's right. It was after high school. But he was 16, right? Or 15.
Yeah, 16 in college.
16 in
Crazy
college.
times, man.
Yeah. So I was thinking, I think community. People who are like them, that they can relate to. Some Filipino American churches I've gone to, the parents, there's like way more first generation than second generation. The way I've seen second generation really enjoy their time in the Filipino American churches when they have when the youth ministry is large. But I've seen a lot of churches where the youth ministry is like 5 people. I'm not saying that that's bad or that they're doing something wrong. But I think if you only have 5 youth kids, like making them feel like a sense of community will be really helpful for them. Like that they can have people who are like them. Mm-hmm. There's a sense of inclusion, and in a larger sense, I think second generation, they don't really have a place to call home sometimes, because when they're in their schools, they have American culture. And to an extent, if you're Asian looking, you continually feel like you're an immigrant. Even though you grew up in America, some people look at you as if you don't belong here, or like you're not from here. Yeah, the idea is that people who are Asian, they always feel like they're not included as part of America. In their schools, they might feel out of place. And then when they're in their Filipino community, they can feel out of place too because they don't speak Tagalog or Filipino. So they feel like, there's a gate from keeping them from being Filipino. So they're not fully Filipino, they're not fully American.
Mm-hmm.
So the safe place for them is when they have other second gens around them.
So, what are some ways that you've tried to, as a youth minister, what are some ways that you've tried to help your youth have that sense of community?
Yeah, for my youth and also for us, we started our own youth group. I think that really helped with the sense of community. Like when we had our youth group, I really felt, because I was an only child, so I really felt like you guys were my brothers and sisters.
Oh, you're talking about our generation.
Yeah, I'm talking about our youth group a while back. Yeah, and also I noticed like there's something amazing when Filipino American churches, they have retreats or when they have like joint events. Like it's amazing to see like how much joy the youth have to see other Filipino American kids. And to an extent, I think like when we've had retreats for the youth ministry, when we've had these big retreats with other Filipino Americans, they kind of like, this is kind of a danger, but they were able to like connect very, very fast. Like they were able to connect really fast and build really strong friendships. And it was like kind of centered on their identity as Filipino Americans. So that's something you have to watch out for. But like even the kids who are not really spiritually mature or some kids who are not even Christians, they were able to form like really close friendships with other Filipino American kids from other churches. So that was something else that I would say is that partner with other Filipino American churches in your area and have joint events and then that would help in building that community. Because I think when we started our retreats, when we started that in combination with churches from Virginia, DC, Maryland, we kind of built this Filipino American church community. So even though there's only 5 of you in one church, you know 5 other youth kids from that church, 5 other youth kids from that church. And then you like, when you're old enough, you actually drive around and meet up with them. So there's that sense of community. Even though you're in an immigrant church, you have that sense of community.
Yeah. Before you move on to the next thing on the list that you've listed down, can you think of why? I mean, you mentioned earlier that a lot of times Filipino churches are geared towards first gen when it comes to community. Is it because they just forget about the second gen, or it's just that's not something they think about, or it's just too difficult?
Yeah, I think it's the first generation. I don't think they were trained to handle American kids. Like they grew up in the Philippines, and then the way that they understand kids is, they don't have to make a conscious effort to help their kids feel like they're part of the community. And I don't know if maybe this is a generational issue. Maybe it's just, this is a problem in even the Filipino churches in the Philippines. Maybe they have this issue too with the next generation having that sense of community. But I think in Filipino American churches, it's not that they don't care about their kids. It's that they're not prepared to deal with American kids. They're not thinking that they're also different, not only generationally, but they also have differences in culture. And I think that for example, like the Tagalog, they don't speak Tagalog most of the time. So that's something that I don't think they anticipated. So when they have their Filipino gatherings, I think, at least for me, I don't understand what they're saying or what they're laughing about.
You just kind of laugh when they laugh.
Yeah, or I'm just if there are no other Filipino American kids there, I'm just like bored or staring.
My kid does that.
What does he do? He just laughs.
He laughs when we're all laughing. But I do plan to teach him Tagalog, but it's kind of funny. He's 5, and so.
Yeah, but I was able to. But I think there are good spots to it too, because I was able to pick up some Tagalog from those interactions.
Do you think that maybe parents think that if there's a youth group, that's sort of enough? Like that's sufficient, maybe. Maybe that's probably why they're not thinking also of or maybe the church leadership is just thinking, do we have a youth group? That's enough. So maybe they're not thinking of more proactive ways, I suppose, or more future plans of how they could incorporate more of the second generation, maybe have second generation leadership and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think for sure when they see a youth group, then they feel that community needs are met. And I think they're met for the most part. But is there something else you had in mind of how they can build community?
Because you were saying that there is a need for community. So I guess my question for you is having a youth group enough for that community aspect?
Yeah. Well, I think the youth group for sure is a good place to start, and then maybe community also. There should be also intergenerational relationships. I think that one also needs to be built, so they feel that they also connect with the adults.
Yeah. I think we've talked a little bit about this because we mentioned earlier that. A lot of Filipinos do kind of enjoy the youth group, but at some point, they start to leave, even if there's a youth group. It's probably not just a community issue.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think the youth group is definitely if they didn't have the youth group, it would be more understandable if they would leave the second generation.
But it helps. Helps a lot.
But it helps a lot, yeah.
Okay. What else did you list down?
So the other thing that I said was mentoring, someone who's connected to community. And I think when I say this is I'm speaking from my perspective and also from Nathan. Me and Nathan formed this list of what
Who's
the needs are. Nathan is
Nathan's our mutual friend.
Our close friend. From church. He was in our young adult ministry. But he was in our church and we were forming this for him, he said he really needs mentoring. And that was something he was looking for at our church. Because even though we were college age at that time, and then we needed someone to help us to grow. I think sometimes, in our case, our youth pastor left, so we were kind of college kids and young adults who didn't have someone reaching out to us from the church anymore because our youth pastor left. So I think we had to turn to other sources for mentoring. In your case, you had to go outside of the church, right, Aaron?
Yeah. So my story is kind of interesting. We had a pulpit supply preacher because our senior pastor wasn't there, and after his sermon, I just went up to him. I didn't even introduce myself. I was like, "Hey, do you have a Bible study?" That's the first thing I asked. I didn't even know his name. I just asked if he had a Bible study, and kind of started from there. I started going to his house every week for his Bible study, and then. Some reason I asked him if he could mentor me and he agreed. So I started going to his house even more, weekly, besides the Bible study. It was really good. Really grew a lot. But I think there were other people too at church, in our Filipino church, who did sort of reach out and try to, build relationships. but not in a systematic kind of way of mentoring, like not in a scheduled kind of way of like a week in and week out kind of mentoring.
Yeah,
I think at some point we do need that. And I know for sure for me, I was looking for something like that, but I understand, we were like a small church. A lot of our parents are really busy with their work.
Yeah.
And a lot of them don't feel, that they are prepared for mentoring. But I do think that like, a friend of mine was telling me that, there is a place for a lot of the older generation in our church who's kind of retired and they know a lot of stuff. And that a lot of them actually wish that they could share what they know, their wisdom from decades of life, I guess, now that they're retired.
Yeah.
And I think it'd be great if somehow we could connect these two, the young generation and the old generation. But specifically, though, I think in Filipino culture, for that thing to happen, it really needs some push from leadership. It just, it seems like, especially with first generation, and I'm noticing that even more now that I'm in a Filipino church context as a pastor, in a Filipino, in a first generation context, it seems like, there's this idea that, I guess it's kind of like this feeling that they're not prepared or trained for it. There needs to be more of a push. Like, yeah, you can do this. You already have the experience. You already have the wisdom. But I do think it also has to go back with like the church planning some training materials or some discipleship training that people from the church could go through. Like if for example, they were planning to mentor. I mean, I see a couple ways that it could be done, right? In Filipino churches, it tends to be like, if there's going to be some discipleship aspect, it funnels down through the youth minister. They don't generally think of like parents or older people doing it. You know what I mean? It's like, if there's going to be some discipleship or mentoring that's going to happen, it's going to be through the youth minister. But I think there should be room for like opening it up to, other people.
Yeah,
like
I think
other more like older, mature people.
Yeah, I think that was the problem in our church was our youth pastor left. So the youth minister who was, I guess it was his job to disciple us. And he was like discipling us, and at the Abbot. But when they left, then we had no one to turn to, or like we had no mentor. So like you had to go out, look for one outside. And then I think even like other people left because of, they needed that mentoring. Even, I think, even our youth leaders, our youth pastor, they needed mentoring too. Right. So I think mentoring is a big, something that needs to be thought about more in the Filipino American church.
This kind of also, I think when adults in general, when first generation in general hear the word mentor, it's kind of like a scary term. It denotes sort of, that means that you have to know the topic and you're experienced. And it also means a lot of responsibility. Because I know when we were in the young adults, I was trying to get older men to mentor us, and it was really difficult to find. It was really difficult to make it happen. Yeah. So I think perhaps the church should talk about what it means to mentor, to disciple. I mean, what are like simple ways of doing it?
Okay, so more training, more.
I
definitely agree. I think like Sarah said that like she goes to CCF, or she went to CCF, and I think the way that how discipleship is such a part of their culture, I think that would be a good start. I think it would be nice if the young adults would mentor the high school kids in a way. Like I think we had a program where we had that, where the young adult, we tried to create a mentoring program where the young adults mentored the high school kids with the permission of the parents, of course. I think that was good.
Yeah, but I think that's still like second generation mentoring a second generation.
Yeah, definitely. So I think what would ideally happen is the young adults are mentored by adults. Of course, their parents can mentor them, but I think it would be nice to have other.
I think we had that. For me, right, like a simple way of mentoring for first generation, and this happened a lot, is like we would go to someone's house. They would invite us for dinner, and like on that dinner table, we just talk.
Yeah.
I think that's just a simple way of, it's probably the simplest way, right? I guess I'm saying this because I know that in first generation's mind, you say mentor, they're already thinking like, I'm not qualified. I didn't go to seminary.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's very important. Like a mentoring could just really be just sharing your wisdom, you know, your life, and asking caring questions like, how are you? What's going on in your life? That kind of stuff. How are you guys? You know, if it's like a group mentoring thing.
Yeah. I remember there were times we went to Tito Hermie's house, and Tito Hermie would, even though we were having our dinner there, Tito Hermie would chime in and talk to us. So I think that was like a good start. Like he would talk to us. He would share about his experiences in the Philippines. So I think, I think a good start is just inviting someone over. Inviting, like, for the first generation, if you're first generation listening to this, a good start would be to just invite the young adults in your house. And we need that more, like, we need more intergenerational fellowship. Like one of the sermons I was listening to was like singles, they need to see what parenting looks like, and they need to be invited in that stage of life. And then likewise, the parents, they also want to have fellowship with singles too. So I think more fellowship between the generations or different life stages is always good for that. Yeah. I think another thing though about mentoring is, I think the second generation, they have certain things that they're looking for in a mentor, right? Like, I think for me, I don't know. I think sometimes maybe, do you think the second generation might be kind of, maybe they're too picky, or maybe they need a different kind of mentor? Like,
the mentee usually, a lot of times, like they don't really know exactly what they need anyways.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I think of it as like, you know, I'm a teacher, I teach music. Like a new guitar student doesn't really know what they have an idea of what they attain to be, but the exact kind of qualities that they're looking for in a teacher, I don't think they exactly know what they need. Until you have more experience. So I don't know. That kind of answers your question.
Well, I think what we get to the root of it is, like, for example, with you, like when you seeked out that mentor, like why did you go to them instead of the adults in our church? Or like, what was it that drew you?
Well, it's because the simple answer is I couldn't find any.
You couldn't find any at our church?
Who would say yes to me?
So you did ask people to mentor you?
Yes.
Okay.
But I think also, I did see like, wow, this guy is like, I felt like that guy, the person who mentored me, Vernon, was really godly. Right. And he did. He helped me a lot.
Yeah.
But there is also a lot of godly people at church.
So the godly people, I guess you went to they were too busy, I guess.
Yeah, it's just that they're busy, and Vernon was a retired pastor, so
Yeah. So I guess maybe that's it.
he just had time, I guess.
Oh, okay, time. So I think to help with this question, like if for church leaders who are listening to this, I think it would be nice if the first generation made more a conscious effort to reach out to the second generation, like a conscious like dedication of time, maybe. Like I know it's hard. Like, I mean, I don't have kids, but I can imagine like those who had small kids.
It's hard.
Yeah, it's hard.
It's hard. Well, it's up to the local church how they decide what's sensible, what would work for them. But it definitely is a good idea to start thinking about how you can fulfill that commandment to make disciples.
Yeah, and I think for the first generation, if there are people in your church who are second gen and they don't have a mentor, you should try to address it. Or you should try to reach out to find someone who can reach out to that, or like make a strategy for the church to reach out to those individuals, so they don't feel like they don't have a mentor.
Yeah,
because I think for me at least, it was hard. I mean, I did have a mentor, so I met with him once in a while. And I also had mentors from other churches, but it was kind of hard a little bit while I was at the church, because I'm also reaching out to my mentees, or like I'm reaching out to those who I'm discipling. And then I was also reaching out to my mentor. So I think, it was a difficult situation to stay in my church with, when I'm reaching out to both. It would be nice, like, if I had like a mentor who was reaching out to me and saying like, "Hey, let's meet." So I think that would go a long way for the needs of the second generation.
Yeah, it does overlap, and this issue overlaps a lot with sort of the DNA or the discipling process that's happening at the church. If you have a good DNA, a good discipling process to begin with, this would be a lot easier.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And it wouldn't be such a big problem. But this is probably for the next topic. But it does seem like in a Filipino church, a lot of the ministry, in the minds of the people at least, is done by the people who are working, like the pastors.
Yeah.
And not by the church themselves. All right. So they see the staff or the pastors doing the ministry.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine if every person at the church was convinced that they need to make disciples.
Yeah.
Then this would not be a problem.
Yeah, and then they would know what it looks like. Like, I think maybe they need examples.
Yeah.
Like, if in order to disciple others, you need to be discipled, right? So I think when they have discipleship in the DNA and then they see more examples of discipleship, all you need is an example, and then you'll know what it looks like. Maybe that's why it's so hard sometimes, because they don't know what it looks like in a church with that DNA.
Yeah, so for our church, for example, it's just a quick example. I'm currently teaching them simple tools that they could use for discipleship. Simple methodology that they could use if they were to gather some friends or coworkers or some people that they could use, even with just their Bible, of how they could do some sort of discipleship.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't need to be seminary trained. They don't need to have like super high education.
Yeah, that's good.
Just a simple tool.
Yeah, I mean, that's good. Like, we don't want people to feel like they can only disciple when they have a seminary degree.
But I think that's one of the biggest hindrances, though, especially in Filipino churches, right? Like that idea of like, sino ba ako, or like, who am I? And like, I'm not qualified for this. Why me? Kind of mentality.
Yeah.
Or You can kind of see it in the expressions, like, kapal na mukha, and like those kind of things where I don't want to embarrass myself.
Yeah. Okay.
So I guess in short, it's, I think, to begin this process of incorporating the second generation, mentorship, community, it really does start with encouraging people and showing them that, yeah, they can contribute something to the church with their own personality, with their own giftings, with their own life experience.
I think something that we overlook is if you're in a different stage of life, you always have something to offer for the stage that you used to be in. There's always something there.
Yeah, like I have a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old. I would benefit greatly from just hanging out with somebody who has teenagers.
Oh yeah. I can see that.
Even if they don't say anything and we just hang out together and I observe the person.
Oh yeah.
How they interact with their family. That's disciple. That's mentorship. Life on life.
Yeah, life on life.
Doesn't have to be, doesn't have to be words.
Yeah. Okay, I think we can move on to another need.
Yeah.
Something else that we were thinking is we need someone in the leadership who understands the second generation needs. So we kind of talked about this in one of our episodes. Is that the second one? Or anyways, we talked about this. I think the second generation, they need someone in leadership who understands them.
I guess what you're trying to say is like someone who focuses or at least tries to learn about the second generation, their struggles, who they are.
Yeah.
What they need.
For example,
they don't necessarily have to be second gen, but someone who's actively pursuing or trying to figure out how they could minister better to the younger generation. Yeah.
Well, as an example, like there was one couple that I know of, Ate Misha and her husband, in another church. They started a Bible study with the young adults in their church, and also in the surrounding churches. They had this young adult Bible study. And I think like she's not second gen, but I don't think she's second gen. But that was already good. I mean, that was already a good and I don't think everyone there was second gen either. So it might be that I think maybe they're also 1.5 gen. But in any case, I think having someone,
intention.
Yeah. In any case, like she really reaches out to her young adult. So I think that would be good if there was someone there are more adults who are like that, who are reaching out to the next generation. And I think she understands, like when I was with her, like even though I'm second gen and she's first gen, I felt like she understood me. So if she was in leadership at the church, like that would really bring a lot of comfort to me, because I know she knows what my interests are, or like so I would trust her in leadership because if the church leaders decide to do something, I know she would speak up for me.
I guess what you're really saying there is it's really just a voice. They just need a voice in leadership.
Yeah, exactly. They need a voice. Like they need someone who, like if the first generation decides to go in one direction,
like a representative.
Yeah, a representative. Like they need someone who can say, "Oh, the second generation, they wouldn't like that," or it would be nice if we did this more so that they could, because this is what they want. For example, for the second gen, like this is going deeper into like the millennial or the generations, but for example, I know some millennials and some Gen Z, they really care about getting involved in the community. And I think a lot of Filipino churches, they don't really have like a program for community involvement. So they really want this, and it would be nice if they had like a leader who could push for that in the church.
That sort of overlaps with that sense of community.
Yeah, and also overlaps with mentorship too.
Yeah, because I think, I used to work at an Anglo church. We had this church where it's like a whole mix of congregations. They had 5 congregations, I think, and I worked in the Anglo. There was a Filipino, Egyptian, there was Hispanic, but there was an Anglo church, and it's very interesting because not only was I the only non-Anglo that you see up on the stage, but I was also mostly the youngest one. And I think that's kind of important, for people to see that, there's somebody who's young and looks different. I think in the same way, when young people see someone, when all they see in leadership are like first gen.
Yeah.
Not that that's wrong or that's bad, but it would be good if they see somebody like, oh, that's kind of like me. I could serve here too.
Yeah.
I could do something in this church too, like Kuya Henrik. So I think it's important what people see.
Yeah. I guess that's kind of like with the multi-ethnic churches. Something that they strive for is having different ethnicities who are in leadership. Because if you have a different ethnicity, someone who looks like you in leadership, that makes a lot of difference, right?
But that's for another topic.
That's a good point. I forgot to mention that. Yeah, definitely. Seeing a second gen who's in leadership or leading worship, even just leading worship, that's like an encouragement. Yeah. It makes them feel that they belong at that church. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's kind of the start, right? If I see somebody like me leading something, then I'll say to myself, oh, I can also do something like that. Or maybe I'll start a Bible study. If he can do it, I can do it.
Yeah, definitely.
Anyways, I think this is a good conversation, and we can continue part 2 for next time.
Yes, definitely. And thank you everyone for listening to our podcast. Please join us in further episodes. We'll be talking about this more. We didn't get to cover everything, but we'll talk more about this. And please give us your feedback if you don't agree, or if you agree, or you have other ideas. Comment down and reach out to us. Thank you.
Peace.